Dear Waheguru, our one true God, we thank you for creating America as a unique haven on this earth where all people are free to worship according to their faith.
This is an India Today Global exclusive. Meet Harmeet Dhillon, who offered ardas at the Republican National Convention for former US President Donald Trump. She is the lawyer, and her firm certainly represents the campaign, the presidential campaign for the Republican Party, and she also represents President Trump. So thank you so much, Harmeet, for joining us here on the network. You offered the ardas, an offering of prayer in this of the Sikh community. What inspired you to do that? This certainly is not the first time that you're doing it. You also did it in 2016.
Koi na jaane tumhara ant, uche te ucha bhagwant. Well, our Republican Party has had a tradition of having offerings of prayer from different groups at our conventions dating back decades. And so Sikhs have done various forms kirtan or ardas at other times as well. I'm a member of the Republican National Committee. I was the first Indian heritage member of the Republican National Committee. And so it's actually our event that we're putting on. So I'm one of the hosts of this event. And so I think it's important as we try to win elections as a party to make sure that all different communities feel comfortable voting for our candidates up and down the ticket, not just President Trump, but I've helped fundraise for congressional campaigns. I've endorsed and sponsored and donated to Senate campaigns. So I'm a lifelong volunteer in the party, and this is part of that. This is, first of all, there are many Sikhs. I live here in California. We have hundreds of thousands of Sikhs in this community, and many of them are active in the Republican Party. And so want to make sure that we all feel included and positive voting for this party and voting for President Trump. And I'm very proud of being a Sikh. I haven't compromised my faith. And this country, in my opinion, is the most welcoming of any country in the world to people of faith. And the other thing is, people may not be aware of this, maybe perhaps unlike other countries, the Republican Party, we are very faith-based. And so literally every event that we have, be it a meal or a speech or what have you, is preceded by two things. First, a prayer, and second, the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. And so prayer is actually integral to what we do. And I've always felt welcome to the party, and I just wanted to communicate that on a world stage.
Okay. Also, you faced a significant amount of backlash, a lot of trolling, and I've been going through the trolling that you actually witnessed and experienced, and they're rather harsh. What is your message to those who trolled you?
Well, I don't really engage with the trolls.
I saw that too.
We have a comment called "Don't feed the trolls." The trolls who live under the bridge, we don't feed them because, first of all, social media isn't real life, and people who are negative and trying to go for clicks, they get amplified on social media. In the room, as you can see from the television coverage, everyone was extremely respectful of me. And since that time, as I was going through the convention, my prayer ardas was at the beginning of the convention. Literally thousands of people I don't know from all over the country took me aside on the street, hugged me, thanked me. And I felt nothing but love from my Republican and other friends. And so I think it's actually made probably over 1,000 new friends on social media from the prayer. And Dear Waheguru, our one true God, we thank you for creating America as a unique haven on this earth where all people are free to worship according to their faith. So overall, we have to do what is true to ourselves. And in fact, all of my religious teachings have taught me that we do not respond to hate with hate. That is not what our religious teachings, or frankly, any religious teachings, preach. And so I'm kind of centered on who I am. I'm a mature adult, and some bullies, some hateful people, and some misguided people are not going to shake me from my path.
Is it harsher, the fact that you're a woman? Was there more gender-based hate that you also faced?
Well, that's a great question, Geeta. Over the years, I've had some death threats from, people, probably, frankly, from India, and they have all been focused on my faith and my gender. So there are rape threats, threats that talk about my appearance and, you know, my history. And so there is an aspect of that historically. But in terms of this particular incident, I think, you know, people, if you're malicious, you're going to use whatever weapon you have at hand. And gender is certainly a weapon that is used against women in public life.
We make a very, very strong distinction between Sikhism, those who follow the faith, and those who propagate the cause for Khalistan. There was a lot of strong message from Khalistani quarters against you as well.
Look, I'm an American, and I am very focused on electing President Donald Trump. It's not something that I engage with. And again, if I were to read the comments, and I have almost 1 million followers on social media, if I were to read the comments and get dragged down by people who disagree with me, I could never get up and do my job. And so the beautiful thing about America, again, is that people are entitled to their views. I actually go to court on a regular basis as an attorney for over 3 decades to defend the rights of people who I don't agree with. That's a principle. And so let them have their opinion. It doesn't bother me at all.
Well, to our viewers, Harmeet Dhillon is also a civil rights lawyer. So she has been fighting for the cause for decades now. Harmeet, just talking about the rights, civil rights, so to say, and something that you've defended and speak of very, very dearly. There is an issue over here. A lot of them really imagine that the Republican Party is anti-immigration. You being a child or a third, fourth generation from an immigrant Indian family with an Indian heritage, what's your view on how you see this positioning of the Republican Party vis-a-vis the community that you represent, the people who might look up to you, people who over here in India also looking at all those from all those of Indian origin who are looking up to people like you who are in leadership roles?
Well, great question, Geeta. So I am actually an immigrant myself. I'm a first-generation immigrant. I was born in Chandigarh, and my family emigrated for career and personal reasons. And India was a troubled time in the late 60s and 70s. And so we settled in the United States and we built our lives in this country. And we've always felt welcomed in this country and in this party. We emigrated to the United States legally. There was a need for people with my father's background, orthopedic surgeon, and he settled in a rural community. And, you know, it was difficult at first when you look different. Both my father and my brother were turbans, and we were yet very well respected by the community because we gave back to the community. We were part of the community. We were integrated into the community. What you see in the current wave of immigration in this country that is controversial is illegal immigration, and that is quite different. And I know India also feels very strongly about its borders. My Nanaji, my grandfather, was an air marshal in the Indian Air Force. So he served in the armed services there, and he defended India's borders. So I think all Indian Americans and Indians can understand that borders are important for a nation's sovereignty. What we have right now under President Biden is an open border. There's an estimated 10 million illegal aliens who have flooded over the border. Some of them are people who are seeking economic improvement. Many of them are the worst criminals and degenerates from their countries who are not wanted back in their own countries. And we have seen during this last year and the years prior a huge spike in violence against Americans and against immigrants, even people who aren't Americans in this country, by illegal aliens. And so this also stems into the huge drug trade that is destroying the fabric of our communities. That is also pouring over the border from the southern border. And so that's really the issue. Now, look, I was elected the Republican National Committee woman from California. That's a prestigious position. I represent 5 million Californians at the Republican National Committee. I've reached the highest levels in my profession. I represent a former president and leading presidential candidate in this country. And I'm not alone. Vivek Ramaswamy, my good friend, has huge support in our community. I think we're going to see so many people be very welcoming to J.D. Vance's wife, Usha. I've heard that people want to learn more about Indian Americans. I personally offered to be supportive of that. And so I've written checks to Neeraj Antani, Republican senator from Ohio, a state senator, and so many others. We have a diaspora community that's very proud. We are not just Indian Americans. Our party has an increasing number of members of Congress, United States Senate candidates from all different backgrounds. So what's different about my party than the Democrat Party is we do not engage in the politics of racial divisiveness, racial balkanization, diversity as a goal in and of itself. We believe in merit. And quite frankly, in that dynamic, our community is the most successful economically in this country. We excel academically. We are in leadership positions in business and industry. Look at all the top Silicon Valley companies, how many of them have leadership. And that is not because of diversity, it is because of excellence. And so in that dynamic, our party always welcomes people, whoever they are, if they're willing to love America and contribute to our country.
You make a very important distinction over here, because that's we don't hear it very often when we see Republican leadership like J.D. Vance himself at the Republican National Convention. He spoke vociferously and very strongly against immigration, but not once did he make the distinction between illegal and legal immigrants. And that's certainly something that, the Republican Party should be focusing on, which you just did. You're saying that there's a distinction that you make between illegal immigration and immigration that comes about legally. Is that something that the leadership understands?
Well, look, you cannot take... Well, sure. And if you look at all of J.D. Vance's speeches, I'm sure you're going to find numerous examples of that distinction being made. It is a commonly made distinction. You have to understand that on the stage of the convention, there are literally, they time you by the second. I know that because I was timed by the second in my own benediction. We did a rehearsal and they tell you how much time you have. And so it is a regularly made distinction. And indeed, President Trump has had many people of immigrant backgrounds, Kash Patel, many others, in his administration. And so I think our party is very welcoming if you come in through the front door. Look, in India, I was born in India, but to visit India, I have to get a visa. And if I want to stay there for a long period of time, that's not allowed. So I don't know, I respect India's right to control its border. And I think everyone can understand that you do not have a country or sovereignty if you don't do the same. So this immigrant and my parents, who are Republicans and were volunteers in the Deep South in a Democrat state, as Republicans, have always felt welcomed in this party.
Okay, let's move on to what really happened. You yourself had made a very strong statement at the convention, and it did come at the back of a very, very serious incident, Harmeet. It came after the assassination attempt on President Trump. And in your appreciation, how do you see that attempt, the incident itself, and the security protocols? Legally speaking, were there major violations? We see a lot of call for heads to roll, but is that where the buck should stop?
Well, look, we are still uncovering the facts that went on there. I do agree with President Trump. The Secret Service agents and other law enforcement who were there with him were very brave and reacted quickly. That said, there seems to have been some kind of a breakdown at some level in terms of preparation for the event. And it has also been reported and stated by the campaign, and I know people in the Republican National Committee as well, who personally told me in Milwaukee that the party and the president's detail have been requesting additional security for a period of months and years. Robert Kennedy Jr., a prominent presidential candidate from a third party, has also been requesting it and was denied it. So I think it is very odd that the Biden administration, whose job it is to protect all Americans, has refused to do that in the case of its political rivals. And that is unprecedented in American history. So there will be heads that will roll. Who that is exactly, I think it remains to be seen. But I come back to the point of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion focus. And what that has done in our country has led to people who are sometimes not qualified getting top positions. And I think the current head of the Secret Service falls into that category. She did not excel academically. I question her credentials, and she has failed at her job of protecting the leading presidential candidate in the United States. So I'll wait and see the facts develop, but I don't think she's long for her job personally.
What happens at the congressional committee? I'm sure there's going to be one where she will be summoned to. Is there a plan, a strategy for the Republicans in terms of how you're going to really pin her down on the security breaches and lapses?
I'm sure there is a plan. I know many of those members on that committee, and they're doing their homework. There are a lot of questions that security experts are prepared to pose. And frankly, today is Sunday here in the United States. I won't be surprised if she resigns before that hearing occurs to avoid the questioning or invoke some kind of privilege, a bogus privilege. But I think that she's in for harsh questioning, and I think there's still some Democrats who also believe in equality and justice in our country, and I think many of them are also appalled that this type of lapse occurred.
As member of the Republican Party now, how do you see the Democratic camp? It is absolutely in a shambles. We're looking at funders withdrawing, Democrats now coming out, leadership, the Democratic leadership now coming and asking Biden to withdraw. Do you think that certainly will happen? And if that happens, what are the options for the Democrats, Kamala Harris, or if it's an open convention, Newsom?
Well,
how do they have it?
So first of all, I agree with your characterization. The Democrats are in wild disarray. And in my almost 40 years in American politics as a volunteer, I have never seen such a thing in my life. So, typically parties do have, and this happens all over the world, candidates not suitable, you have a quiet word behind the scenes. You don't leak it publicly and freak out. And so I think it's pretty interesting that that's what's happening here. And but that said, look, from a legal campaign finance perspective, the Democrats have a very narrow window to replace their nominee. And there are arguably some states where that deadline has already passed, where they cannot replace the nominee. And those are states that Democrats would need to win. But Kamala Harris is obviously the front runner in that regard. She's the vice president. And however, the mechanism, I think, is really questionable. Either President Biden has to step down as president, because I don't see how you can make the argument that you're not fit to run for president, but you're fit to be the president. Those are at odds. But we have a mechanism if he refuses to go, which I'm sure Democrats are looking at, which is called the 25th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which allows the cabinet of the current president to say that he's medically unfit or otherwise unfit and remove him. That would also be extraordinary and unprecedented in our history. Now, the rumors are that Democrats don't like Kamala Harris either, which is also poses a very interesting problem for them, because the Black and female vote has been the most loyal demographic to the Democratic Party for decades. And so insulting that demographic, which is their most loyal, by passing over their candidate is going to pose problems for Democrats, not just for president, but all over the ticket. You're going to see massive outrage if that happens. So as a Republican, all I can say is, regardless of who the Democrat nominee is, our party's platform, our party's policies, our party's candidate is the best. So bring it on. By the way, Gavin Newsom has some of the worst baggage. I'm doing this interview from San Francisco. I've seen him up close for more than 20 years. His baggage and his message is far left, and this is not a far left country. America is not ready for a world where parents don't have rights over their children's pronouns and gender transition in the schools, where we have abortions in the 9th month, where we have crime that is enabled, and we have an open border. I don't think America's ready for that anywhere in the country other than California. And even in California, we're revolting against that. And I will expect to see a rightward turn at the ballot box in California at our November election too.
Right, I'll come to that, because I see a lot of support coming in for the Republican Party from quite a few billionaires over here, and Elon Musk has taken a lead on that front. But before I come to that, staying with the nominations, the Democratic nominations, who's then really a threat to the Republican Party if there is an open convention? For now, she said no, but is Michelle Obama a threat?
Michelle Obama is popular amongst Democrat billionaires, but I don't think this is the time in America to be going backward like that. And I frankly can't see what's in it for Michelle Obama, because she's a very good life, being the former first lady. Her family has gained hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue after leaving the White House, and so they can continue their comfortable life. So much as that may be the dream of some Democrats, I really don't see it. There's a lot of baggage as well from the Obama administration, and so I think Democrats' best bet, if I were to be a strategist on their part, is to, start with a clean slate and look for two Democrats who reflect the values of America. Now, the problem for the party is it has consistently gone so far to the far left, pandering to far left billionaire money and extremist agendas on, you name it, every policy. It's extreme, that I think they're hard pressed to find two moderate Democrats in leadership of the party right now. So that would be their challenge.
All right. So Joe Biden has tweeted and he's put out a statement. He'll be addressing the nation in a bit later, but it says, "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down." That's news just coming in, Harmeet. This is the biggest news that we're getting, that Joe Biden is not going to be the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. That is as big as it gets. So what are we looking at? What are the options that the Democrats have now?
So this is very interesting, because Democrats just held a long primary process, which is almost concluded. It's not concluded in a couple of states, but it's almost over. And Joe Biden was the nominee of the Democrats. He had secured the nomination. And so what Democrats have effectively done at this point is told their voters that the voters' choice is not relevant. So when the Democratic National Committee meets, and there's rumors they're going to do it by Zoom or what have you, maybe now they're going to actually have a convention in Chicago, which is going to be very ugly. They're going to be replacing Joe Biden with a choice that was not the choice of Democrat voters throughout the United States. And so I think that's a problem for them from just a small d democracy perspective. And, their challenge is finding people who will be accepted by their base. If it's Kamala Harris, I think some constituencies are going to be happy, but there will be widespread panic amongst Democrats down the ticket, because she doesn't have any coattails. She got to where she is in life, and I've written about this. She's started out with a good education and background, but she's effectively gotten all of her positions in life through diversity and quotas effectively. And so she's not that respected, and she doesn't have coattails. She's not popular either. And so I think that's a problem. So as a Republican, I like to see it. As an American, the message sent by the tweet that you just described is that America is kind of leaderless right now, because if you're not qualified to seek re-election and your party doesn't think you're qualified to seek re-election, how are you in charge of this country? So I think that's a kind of shocking development that Democrats are going to have to address. All of us Americans are going to have to address it, because, there are evil forces in this world. There's China on the rise. There's Russia. There's Iran. There's Hamas terrorists. There are evil forces out there, and instability at the top of the pyramid, if you will, of power in the world is concerning and destabilizing all over the world.
Well, he does say that he's going to complete his term, so he's going to remain president of the United States of America till November 5th, Harmeet. But we also see Kamala Harris now campaigning quite strongly in the rallies that Biden should have been doing, should have not had COVID-19.
Oh, this is not about COVID-19, Geeta. This is about not being able to function for more than a few hours a day. Look, I have members in my family who suffer from some neurological disorders. He has got more than COVID-19, let me tell you that right now. And so I hope he's able to live his life out peacefully and is cared for well as a human being. That's what I hope. But in terms of Kamala Harris and her campaigning, I mean, you're a journalist, you know what is said about her and her style. She is not able to function. I've seen her up close and personal here in San Francisco. And I've litigated against her involving a religious liberties case when she was the attorney general, which I won. She is not able to function without a huge entourage and, high turnover in her staff. It's going to be very interesting to see who steps up to help her across the finish line. But if they have an open convention, I can promise you there will be a lot of knives, metaphorically, in her back, because Democrats are very concerned she's not going to be able to pull governors, congressmen, senators across the finish line, which is the job of the top of the ticket person. I did an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal a few years ago after she was nominated, talking about how Kamala Harris has flip-flopped on every single policy position she's ever held. And so there's a lot of baggage over there. People do not trust her. And it's not because she's a woman or any of that. It's because of her own history of saying and doing anything to get ahead. And people don't respect that. That's not authentic in politics. And so that said, Democrats are now in a position to be able, and so people are like, oh, Harmeet, what are they going to do with the money? I answered that question a million times at the convention. It's actually not a problem for Democrats money-wise. They're able to move Biden's war chest into some kind of a dark money fund, super PAC or what have you. And the Democratic nominee, whoever that is, could start raising money all over again. And there are irresponsible Democrat billionaires who helped buy Joe Biden his position. He definitely wasn't the most popular or qualified person for that candidate in 2020. And so there'll be plenty of people to step forward. But can you fool the American voters again? I think not. We're on a roll here in our party, and our country needs unity right now. And I think we're going to be uniting around the presidency of Donald J. Trump for his 47th presidency term.
I know we're running out of time, but before I let you go, you don't even have to say it. Your camp is absolutely in order, as opposed to what we're seeing right now as we speak within the Democratic circle. And the polls are looking good in some quarters, but there were some polls where a comparison between Trump and Harris showed Harris almost neck to neck or a little ahead. What do you make of those polls?
So we don't have, that's interesting. Polls are about samples, but we don't elect people on a national basis here in our country. We have an electoral system where you have to win states and win those votes. And so we don't have a national popular vote, and it's not possible under our Constitution. So really the analysis is, how is she doing or going to do, or whoever the Democrat nominee is? I do not submit that it's going to be her, vis-a-vis Trump in about half a dozen key states. And even there, really in about 12 counties in the United States, that's where this election is going to be decided. And so game on. We have 4 months to the election now. We have our work cut out for us. This is something that people have been talking about, so it's not a shocker out of left field completely. And I know I've already, as I'm speaking to you, my phone is blowing up with messages from my fellow lawyers, because we have, it's like SWAT team time. So.
All right. And as a lawyer, finally, the legal hurdles that Trump has faced, could that be an impediment during the next 4 months?
Not at all. So first of all, it's incredible how President Trump has persevered. I mentioned this during my ardas, over adversity. And he has been knocked down and keeps getting back up to fight for the American people. The New York case is the only one which has led to a resolution. And under the Supreme Court precedent that was set less than a month ago on presidential immunity, building off of a case that actually I've been handling, a civil case for President Trump in the DC circuit, that case needs to be thrown out. The conviction is infirm under our legal precedents because the conviction was obtained using testimony that should have been prevented from being used because of presidential immunity. So I predict it's going to get thrown out, and most Americans, including many Democrats who are being honest, think that that was a bogus prosecution. The other cases are not going to trial. The Florida case has been thrown out. It'll be years if it ever comes back after appeal. The case in DC has to be slowed down significantly because of this immunity analysis that has to occur. Also not going to go to trial before the election. And the Georgia case is in as bad a disarray as the Democrats are right now. So I feel pretty good about that.
Will we see more billionaires follow Trump now after Elon Musk and so many others who've come with this news of the Democrats? Will we see some more big faces come join the Republican camp?
I think they're going to wait and see some of them as to who the Democrat is, but the trend has definitely been in that direction. I think, first of all, billionaires didn't get where they were without being successful at business. And the Biden administration and Biden-Harris administration, I should say, has been extremely hostile to American businesses. So I've spoken to some of these billionaires at fundraisers, and they tell me their concern is, frankly, about the economy, about their workers, about the ability of American businesses to be competitive and grow in a competitive international market. And the Democrats have gone so far to the left that they make taxation out of control on businesses. The labor market is significantly threatened because of a combination of policies that are bad. The regulatory state is sclerotic and antithetical to American business. And finally, we want stability in our country, and we don't have it under the current leadership. And so those are the reasons that many former and never Trumpers, former Democrat supporters, and former agnostic politicians and business people are coming towards President Trump right now. And so we're looking to continue to harness that momentum. I saw a lot of new faces at the convention and the box suites, and I expect to see that momentum continue.
Harmeet, Dhillon, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Network. Indeed a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.